So now that we've talked about how to create a simple application with an Android list control, let's look at what we have to do in order to customize that list. And we're going to use the same example we did last time. Import the custom list project from the chapter 3 directory in your exercise files. It's basically the same project that we just built. And if we look at main.java, we have our list activity class, and we're setting the list adapter equal to the countries in this XML file. So we have these 4 countries, and we're populating it into our list. And we have our main.xml layout, which contains our list view. So it's basically starting at the same place we left off. Now the difference, if we look in the drawable folder, we have some flags for those 4 countries. And what we're going to do is we're going to lay out the flag next to each country. Okay, so what we need to do first is create a list item layout. And this is going to be the layout that Android uses to lay out each item in the list. So we need to create a new layout XML file. So to do that, I'm going to use this third button here in the toolbar, which opens a wizard to help us. And I'm going to call this list_item.xml. And this is going to be of type layout, and we're just going to keep it as a linear layout. So we'll click finish, and now here we are. So the first thing I'm going to add to this is an image view, because we want to be able to display that flag. So I'm going to drag that in, and then I'm going to put in a text view next to it. So again, we're using a linear layout with a horizontal orientation here. And I'm going to set up some properties on this text view. Come down here, and let's do text size. We'll do 20 SP, our scale independent pixels. And maybe we'll bump it up actually to 25. And let's make the text color white. So we'll just do that. And now we want to position it a little better, because obviously we want to be centered. Now the size of our flags is going to be different than this size, but we'll worry about that once we actually see it on the device. But for right now, let's actually add some margins to this text view. So do layout margin top. Let's do 10 dp for device independent pixels. Maybe give a little bit to the left too. So we'll do 5 dp just to kind of center it better. We're not going to worry too much about it right now, because we'll look at it once we get it on the device. So here's our list item layout file. So now let's go to the main.java file. Now here's where we have to do some code here to make things customized. So right now we're using this array adapter to take the resources and get the country names and to put them into this list using this built-in layout comes with Android. So what we're going to need to do is to create our own adapter class. And so I'm just going to change this to my adapter. Now I haven't actually created that yet. It's showing here that I can do that with a quick fix. The one other thing that I'm going to have to add here is I'm going to have to add the ID of the text view. So if I look in my list item, Android needs to know which ID inside of here is the actual text view so it can set the text. So I'm going to need to pass in another value here. So that's going to be r.id, and then it's going to be that text view. Okay, so at this point, I actually need to go ahead and create that class. Now I'm just going to create it down here as an inner class. If you're building a large scale application, you're probably going to want to create this in a separate file. This will work for us for now. So I'm just going to create a private class, and I'm going to call it my adapter. And we're going to want that to extend array adapter with a type of string. So now we can create our class. Now if we click here, we can see it's asking us to add a constructor, and this is the one we want that matches here. So we have the context, we have the integer representing the layout, and then the integer representing the actual text view in that layout, and then our list. So we'll do that, and now it's generated our constructor here. Now in the constructor, we're just going to leave it so that it calls the super constructor. So now what we need to do is to provide an override for the getView method. So if I actually start typing that, and we can see we can override that method. Now what the getView does is this is called for every row in the list. And when this is called, then we have an option to modify what's inside of a particular list item. And in our case, we're going to be modifying it to display the correct flag image inside of here. So what we need to do is we need to get some code references to our layout. And to do that, we use the layout inflator class, which basically allows us to pass in a layout resource, and then it's going to inflate it out so that we can modify its contents. So I'm going to come inside of here, and we'll create a new instance of layout inflator, and I'll call it inflator is equal to, and now we need to actually get it because it's actually a service. So we need to get it as a system service. And like I've showed you in an earlier movie, to do that, we say get system service. And we're going to use a constant to reference what that service is, which is in the context, and it is the layout inflator service. And let me just minimize that so we have more space. And it's asking us to cast to a layout inflator. So we'll do that. So we now have an instance of the layout inflator. Now what we want to do is we want to get to basically the resources in that row. So we want to get the inflated layout information in essence. So what we're going to do is to create a new instance of the view class, which is going to represent a single row that's returned to us here in this method. So I'm going to call it row. Now we're going to use the layout inflator. So we're going to say inflator.inflate. Now to this, we're going to pass in three things. We're going to pass in the resource of the item that we want to inflate. And then we want to pass in the view group, which in our case is just going to be the parent, and then Boolean attached to root. So we're going to choose this. Now we're going to give it the ID of our layout. So I'm going to say r.layout and then our list item, because that's the thing we actually want to inflate here. Now for this, I'm just going to put in parent, and we're going to pass in false for this. Okay, so now we have our row, and now we can start manipulating the row. Well, the first thing that I'm going to do is to just get a reference to the strings that we're actually dealing with here. So I'm going to copy this up here. I'm just going to create a local string array. I'm going to call it items and set it equal to that. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to take all those text items that we're dealing with, the country names, and just store them in this local variable, just so they're easier to work with. Okay, so now I need to get a reference to both the image view and the text view because I want to be manipulating these. So let's first get the image view. And this is the same way we've always gotten references to things. And actually here we need to reference the row. So we need to say row.findViewById and r.id. There's our image view. And again, we'll cast it. And now let's get a reference to the text view. And I'll call it TV. And then again, row.findViewById. And again, we're getting references to these because we actually want to modify them for each row in the list. Okay, so now that we have this, now we're ready to actually start manipulating things. Now, one of the things we want to do first is we want to set the text of the row equal to the correct country name. So to do that, we're going to say TV, which is our text view, dot set text. And now we're just going to pull out the correct item. So again, we're storing all of the countries here in this items string array. So I'm going to say items, and then for the element, we can use this position property that gets sent to get view. And this is how we know which item in the list this actually is. So we're just going to use position as the index here. And that's now going to set the correct text. So now the next thing we need to do is to worry about the flag image. And for this, I'm just going to use a switch statement here. I'm just going to use if-else statements. So I'm just going to test if items position, which again is giving us the current country name, dot equals, and this is testing if it's equal to United States. So if that is the case, we're going to set the image resource of our image view to the USA flag. So to do that, we're going to do IV set image resource. And now we're going to go to the resource that represents that flag image, which is r.drawable.usa. Okay. So let's just go ahead and copy this just for time's sake. We'll paste it in. And now this is going to be an else if. So if the current position in the list equals Brazil, then we're going to use the Brazil flag. There we go. And again, copy this. Let's just paste it 2 more times. If the position equals Russia, we use the Russia flag. And lastly, if it's equal to Japan, we'll use a Japan flag. For each of the row that comes through, we'll have the correct text and the correct flag image. We want to now return this row of data here. So we actually don't need to pass in these things. All we have to do is to say return row. Okay, so again, the main point to take away from this is we need to actually create a subclass of array adapter, and that way we can come into the getView method. This will allow us to basically customize each of the items in the list. And in this case, we're actually testing for the country name and then putting in the correct flag. So we come up here, we can use this, and we have one quick fix here we have to do. And we just needed to change that so that it was an array of strings here. Okay, so all the quick fixes are done, and now we should have a customized list view. So let's go ahead and launch that on the emulator, and we'll see what we have. And you can see now we have our flag images. Now I mentioned that we probably needed to do some work on the styling here. So what we can do is we can actually increase the size of these flags. Let's just try that a little bit. So we can come in here, and actually let's go back to our project. We'll come into our list item layout. And right now it's just set to use wrap content. So what we can do here is to show in properties. And now if we wanted to, we can give actual sizes to these. So let's say we wanted to do 50 dp and 50 dp for the layout width and height. Basically, we can go back and forth now and do some tweaks to the actual layout of the list view. But again, that's the essential way in which you create customized lists. We take the same approach, except when it comes to our adapter for those lists, we actually have to go in and respond to the getView event. And that way we can go ahead and customize the way each row actually displays its data.